Hey guys, so I wanted to come on here and just quickly talk about what I feel is, the difference of how Ken Penders treated Sally's character and Ian Flynn treating Sally's character. First of all, as far as Ken is concerned, I know some people kind of feel that he didn't really like the character, and they have a right to their opinion on that. But I don't think he really had an issue with the character because I think Ken being in the industry a little longer than someone like Ian Flynn and being trained and taught and working under the shadow or working under the influence of some of the best in the industry up to that point even today. um, I feel Ken was instilled with a old school mentality, and that old school mentality is what's going to get people talking. What's going to get them to pay attention to your product. Get them talking about and wondering, talking about what happened, wondering what's going to happen next. I think that's why Ken, did the things that he did with Sally's character throughout his run on the comic. From the Princess Sally miniseries, to trying to kill her off in Endgame, but then being thwarted, I should say, thwarted or stopped, if you will. Thwarted, throtted, if you will, stopped by Sega and Archie separately, almost simultaneously, for various reasons. Um, I think the reason he did all this, honestly, was because of the fact that he was using that old school mentality of what is going to get people talking, when it comes to the book and the characters. I don't think he had, an issue, like I said, with her whatsoever. Because if he had an issue with her, he would have not done the Sally miniseries. He wouldn't have wrote for it. If he had an issue with her, he wouldn't have dedicated the 48-page special's main story of In Your Face, which is, the name of the 48-page issue or special issue, to being part of that, to being part of the build up to the Sally miniseries. Nor would he have dedicated time to separate backup stories in earlier issues of the main comic to get to this point. So I don't really think he had a real disdain for the character. I think he was just going with that old school mentality of what's going to get people talking. What's going to get them to, pick up the issue and read it to see what all the hubbub's about. I think honestly that's why he did the things he did. You know, from like I said, from from how he presented her in the Sally miniseries to the um, to the potential killing her off, which was stopped, thwarted, if you will, thwarted. That's what the one I'm looking for, by Sega and Archie to an extent. Um, to Bunny sleeping with who she thought was Sonic, but it really wasn't. To him hooking up Sonic and Fiona because, from what he said in reply to someone on Twitter, he wanted to have them hooked up for a temporary period because, they were both trying to find some kind of closure, try to find some healing from previous situations. So, again, I don't think he had a real issue, though, with Sally's character because of everything he did with her character and everything he's done afterwards, not just with the whole Knuckles stuff and all that, but with other scenarios as well, because he was using that old school mentality of what's going to get people talking. So I don't think, honestly, he had a real issue with her. He was just going with what he felt was going to get people talking. Now, when he came out and said that the original idea to kill Sally off was because he felt there was no need for her anymore, because the king was coming back, that is essentially an old school mentality thought. You know, because if you're going to bring a character back that has more say in what happens, more power in what happens, and one of your main characters is a relative of theirs, whether it's a son, a daughter, maybe the wife or husband, and you're going to bring back, the person that they're standing in for, then the question is, what do you do next with that character that was standing in for them? And his essential idea originally to get people talking about the book and what he thought was the original finale was to kill her off. kill her off, and that's going to get people talking. I mean, it got me talking. It got me wondering what the heck was going on. So, yeah, he did his job. He did his job because he used that old school mentality. And I do apologize for the light, guys. I'm just trying to see how much time I have left here. All right. But yeah, I think he was just using what is considered an old school mentality instilled in him by those he worked under and learned from when he got into the business. Because remember, like I said, he's been in the business a lot longer than Ian. And speaking of Ian, let's talk about how he represents Sally. Now, some people might say that Ian, I do apologize for the flashlight, just taking my time here. Now, some people would say that Ian treated her a little bit more respectfully, and I would say he did treat her and write her a lot better than Ken. I mean, for example, he basically had her admit, to Bunny in issue 173, and then later on, I think in one of the 180 issues where Sally and Amy and Jeffrey had to go save Sonic because he was captured by Knack. He had her admit on both occasions her stupidity in 134, in the way she had acted afterwards. And that it was selfish of her to do so, all because she was going through a lot, and she should have understood better about the whole situation. So I'll give Ian credit for writing her to admit, how in her wrongness of the way she acted. I will give Ian credit, as I've done before and others have done before, in the fact that, throughout all that as well, he slowly built from, I'm assuming, 175 to 222, he slowly started to build or rebuild the Sonic Sally relationship, even with a few curves here and there, a few obstacles here and there. He eventually got to the goal of getting them back together before he did what he did later on, and what I consider is a very controversial move, and others feel is the worst decision he could have made in the Mecha Sally arc. But again, I've given my opinions on that. I feel that at the time, I'm just going to leave it at this, he wanted to create his own magnum opus, that would be remembered as fondly as, the endgame story was that Ian had done. But I don't think he had to go as far as he did or as long as he did to make that happen. But even with that said, even after that was, done with, and he went into the reboot retcon portion of the book, whether you consider it soft or not, I don't think he wrote Sally badly. I think he wrote her great. When he did the new era, as they would call it, later on, I think he gave her a little bit more personality than she'd had before. I mean, not saying her personality wasn't great before. It was tremendous. But giving her a little bit more quirkiness and all that, especially, putting in the comedic fact that she's not a good cooker and all that, I thought was great. I thought it was a good move on his part. I really do. I really do. So I think Ian wrote her decently, pre-reboot and post-reboot. I really do. And, I think he honestly was a fan of the romance between her and Sonic, and that's why he took his time in rebuilding it. So in the end, I think both guys had their own way of, basically displaying the character and, bringing her to the forefront, the way they did. They had their own way of displaying her, showing her attributes and her, and all that. So I think they both had a love for the character in their own way, which is why I don't think either one of them, wrote her badly.